Good evening. Good evening. Happy Wednesday. Hope you're having a great day. Going to give a few minutes to allow those to come on who are going to join us tonight. I hope you've had a great week so far. I hope it's been a blessed week. I hope and pray that you've been able to get your rest and that you've been able to just get what you need so far. Dr. Angela Peterson Paisley, thank you for joining me tonight. Good evening. What an honor to have you join me tonight as you all are coming on. Good evening, Dr. Chandler, my mom. Thank you for joining me. As everyone's coming on, I want to give you time to just do away with the day. You may have had a rough day today. It may have been stressful. You may have had a lot going on, but hopefully things will get better. Let's get this centered right. Hopefully the day will get better tomorrow. So just pray that all goes well for you. I'm grateful for all those of you that are joining and sitting in with me on tonight. We got a great subject matter that I want to share. I'm excited. I have a lot I've been praying about and just want to share what I have with you. So we'll give it a few more moments for people to join. Charles Wells, old friend of the family, thank you for joining, sir. Bless you. Give it a couple more minutes. Auntie Lydia, thanks for joining tonight. Come on in. And by all means, if you want to, guys, please go ahead, like and share this live. Let your friends and family know that we're on tonight. Come on in the room. Come on in the room. Let's see, who else do we have coming in? Good evening. Good evening. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I don't like to hold long because I know that you all have better things to do. So let's go on and get started. And we know, of course, that have a lot of people that come on after the fact and they like to watch the replay. Brenda Percy, thanks for joining me tonight. Welcome, welcome. Those of you that are coming in, by all means, let me know you're here. Send me a good evening message or a hello. Let me know you're in. Like and share this with anyone that you feel could benefit from it, of the things that I'm putting out. And I'm just glad you guys are here tonight. So as you guys saw the subject matter, well, before I get started, I like to do this first. Let me not get ahead of myself. Let's take a deep breath. Take a deep breath in and out, because I'm going to be talking about some things that may be heavy for some of you. And so I want to make sure that you take a moment to kind of decompress from the day. Take some time to just relax. And before we get into this session tonight, so you guys know I've been working and talking about anxiety on many levels and just really dissecting how anxiety affects people and just what all happens with anxiety. So tonight I want to talk about anxiety as it relates to trust. So I did a lot of writing tonight, got a lot of points that I wrote down that I want to share with you tonight. So my subject tonight is when trust issues feel like self-preservation, but in all actuality, it's really self-imprisonment. So when you feel like you're being protective of yourself, when you feel like you're trying to preserve your sanity, a lot of us like, I'm taking care of me first, which you should. And when you feel like you are, being protective of yourself and, you want to take care of yourself, but if you're not careful, it can become self-imprisonment. So what does that mean? That means that sometimes the trust issues that you are often dealing with, what you mistake for self-protection and self-preservation or self taken care of. But in reality, it creates in you a cycle of fear and anxiety that keeps you trapped. So sometimes you can be so caught up in trying to preserve yourself. And most of the time, we are in self-preservation mode because we've been hurt. We've experienced some type of trauma, or we've gone through some type of situation that has caused us to be on guard, to have our walls up, so to speak. And so because of something that you may have experienced in your past, some type of pain, some type of hurt, some type of embarrassment, any type of trauma will cause you to be overprotective the next time around. And so when you find yourself, you will rationalize it in your mind to say, well, I'm just being protective. I'm just taking care of myself. In all actuality, you're imprisoning yourself further. And sometimes you can go too far with trying to protect yourself, and it can get imprisoning for you. So I want to really discuss how past betrayals can condition you to expect the worst and how you can break free of those. Sometimes when you've experienced those previous traumas and previous hurts, it will cause you to expect the worst all the time. Whenever anyone new is coming into your life, or when you meet new people, or when you're entering new relationships, and not just personal relationships, it can affect you in business. It can affect you so many other ways, not just affect, but infect you and your life. And so a lot of times we find ourselves conditioning our minds and our hearts and our brains to be hyper vigilant, and to want to go into self-preservation mode. But we have to learn to break free from that. And I'm speaking from experience because I know what it's like to be that way, and that is something I'm still working through as well, learning to trust people again, learning to not think that everyone is suspect, to feel like, you don't want to be bothered with anybody. And you kind of put, like I said, those walls up, and you start to kind of self-isolate. Robin is coming in. J. Emmanuel Obi, thank you for joining me. And as I'm speaking, by all means, throw your comments in the chat. Talk back to me. So my first point is this: fear of being deceived, manipulated, or left behind. How many know what that feels like? The fear of feeling manipulated again, the fear of being lied to again, the fear of being left behind. Maybe someone just, totally dumped you or dissed you, and you just feel like totally lost, and so that will cause you to put up walls the next time. Trust issues often create a sense of constant uncertainty and emotional insecurity. So you become insecure. You become unstable in your ability to trust people, and you find yourself in uncertainty. You constantly second guessing yourself, feeling like, well, I don't know about that person. And always, as we say, the slang today, giving people the side eye all the time, because you don't trust them, and so, and we tend to judge new people that are coming into our lives based off of what somebody else did. Maybe you had a friend, who betrayed your trust, or, or told your deepest, darkest secret. And next thing you know, it's out on all the social media streets, or, it's out in your community of other friends or things of that nature. And sometimes it'll cause you, when someone else comes along, not to trust them. What about relationships? If you've been through a bad marriage or a bad breakup, not just marriage, but, maybe you were dating someone that you felt like, you really had a good connection with, and maybe they did something to betray you. When that happens, it will cause you to put a wall up, and it's very difficult to get back into the dating scene again because, you feel like everybody's crazy, and you're basing all of your encounters, all of your relationships, every future person that you might meet, or any potential friend, you're basing them and you're judging them off of what you experienced before. Hey, Jaylene, Dr. Jeter, thank you for joining me tonight. So it will cause you to be hypervigilant. And in being hypervigilant, in constantly being in protective mode, will exhaust you, literally. And so sometimes when you're dealing with anxiety and you're feeling overwhelmed all the time, could it be that you're exhausted because you don't trust people? And so you're always watching everybody. Are you one of those kind of people, anytime you're in a crowd or you're around people, you always watching people out the corner of your eye, and, you don't trust nobody. When you're out in the public, you're over, just overly doing everything, doing the most, because you're like constantly, okay, I don't, who was that? What are they doing? And you can never relax and enjoy the moment. Have you ever been in a group of people, and everybody's having a great time all around you, and you're sitting there just watching because you don't trust the environment. You don't trust those that are there. And so it causes you to be exhausted. When you're dealing with this kind of anxiety, welcome, Calvin. When you're dealing with this kind of anxiety, it can literally exhaust you mentally, physically, in every kind of way possible. It will literally cause you to be exhausted. So when you're dealing with that, and when you're in this overexhaustion, it's like an anxiety loop, excuse me. When you're dealing with an anxiety loop, you tend to overthink everything. You overthink every decision you make. You overthink every person. You overthink everything, and your brain never shuts off. You're constantly thinking, what should I trust them? Well, I don't know. Why did I do that? I shouldn't have said that. Well, I wonder if they really, for real. I'm not sure about them. And you're constantly going through this whole mental loop over and over. And so when you're dealing with that, you overthink, and then you start catastrophizing. So that means, hey, Penny, that means that when you're catastrophizing, everything is doom and gloom. Have you ever been around somebody who is always, they just negative Nancy all the time? Every time you turn around, y'all talk back to me. Do anybody know any negative Nancys? People who are always negative. They are never happy. They always find something bad in the situation. They are always, just everything is wrong. Like if we say the sky's blue, it's black, it's gray to them. If we say, oh, we had a good time, well, it wasn't really all that. So-and-so is really a nice person. I mean, she all right. I don't know. I got to watch her. And you're constantly dealing with, that kind of, negative feedback all the time. And if you're not careful, you can become that person. I remember one time a friend of mine called me to the carpet, because of, some of the things that I had dealt with, previously. And I was in a funk, dealing with anxiety and depression and all that. And I'm going through changes, and everything that was coming out of my mouth for days was just negative, negative, negative. And my friend finally told me, she was like, why are you always, everything you say, is negative? You seeing the mug is half empty every time I say something, you just being super negative lately. And I had to really take some self-inventory and look at that and like, you know what? You're right. So you all can agree, right? They want to be heard. They're negaholics. Absolutely. They always have something negative to say. But what happens when that's you? We're quick to look at somebody else. But what if it's you? What if you're the negative Nancy in the group because of what you've been through, because of your past trauma, because of your past hurt? So we tend to be that way if we're not careful, and we catastrophize everything. We have trust issues. We make even good relationships look bad. When you're in that catastrophizing phase, and when you're in that negative phase, when you're overthinking things and you're just in a bad space, you could actually be in the middle of a good thing and not realize it. I'm gonna let that sit for a minute. Robin, you can relate. That's been you. Absolutely. We've all done it. I don't think we really pay attention to it as much as we should, but we've all done it, especially if you're just coming out of a bad situation or some type of traumatizing issue. You are very hypervigilant going into the next thing. And so, when you get that way, you can have a nice situation going on, the next time. You could have a new job. Maybe they did you dirty at your last job. You get a new job, and now all of a sudden you don't trust nobody, you just have a whole issue with corporate people. I remember when at one of my previous companies, I was in leadership, and one of my employees, I had to really work with her to get her to trust me. And not, on a personal level, but just to allow me to lead her so I could help her be successful. But because she had had previous bad leadership, because she had previous leaders who treated her bad, and previous leaders who, had just done mean things to her and had treated her wrong and didn't really care genuinely, she struggled with trusting me. And so I had to go through a whole thing where I had to literally build my trust with her. And thankfully, because of my experience, I knew what was going on, so I was able to deal with it. But what if you're dealing with someone who's not into mental health space, or someone who's not aware of what's going on with you? And sometimes if you're not careful, you can literally push a good thing away, or destroy a good thing, or self-sabotage a good thing because you're being overly hyper vigilant. So we have to be mindful of that. And then here's another one: constantly questioning people's motives. You ever do that? You're constantly questioning somebody's motives, like, she don't really mean that. We even do it in church. How many times have we had a brother or sister in church who, maybe they're a new member and they're coming in, they really just genuinely want to be a part, or, they're genuinely wanting to serve, or they're genuinely wanting to, just be a part of the family. And we giving them the side eye like, I gotta watch her, I don't know. Because somebody else that used to go to the church caused, a lot of havoc and was a hot mess and kept up a lot of junk, because it happens in the house of God. So we got to sit and wait for a minute. Right, Robin? We be like, wait for the negative to come out. We be sitting there waiting, giving the side eye, waiting to see, yeah, I don't know about her. And if you're not careful, if you're constantly questioning people's motives, if you're constantly looking over your shoulder, if you're constantly giving the side eye, it will drain you emotionally. It will drain your emotional energy. And again, you become a negative Nancy. And then the difference between a healthy caution and fear-driven isolation. That's a good point. Do we really know the difference between being healthy and cautious? Like a healthy caution, like, okay, well, hey, good to meet you, and giving people the benefit of a doubt until otherwise, as opposed to having that fear-driven isolation where it's like, honey, I don't trust her, so I don't have nothing to say. And the person walk up to you, hey, good morning. Good morning. Just nasty. Again, in church now, we know this happens outside of church, but this kind of stuff happens in church. And like, that saying that says hurt people, that is so true. And 9 times out of 10, people that are mean, people that are nasty, people that, just negative, all of that, a lot of times is because they've been hurt before. And so that whole wall and that whole mask goes up, and they are just doing the most. So we have to know the difference between that. And then here's another one. Anxiety tricks you into thinking that guardedness equals control. That's good. I'm enjoying my own cooking tonight. When you're in the middle of that guarded anxiety, it'll trick you into thinking, oh, I'm just being protective, or I'm just guarding, which makes you feel like you have control over the situation. Because ultimately, when you're feeling anxiety, it's really because you feel like you don't have control. And so anytime anything triggers something from the past, you're automatically like, oh no, wait a minute, I'm not gonna ever let that happen again. I'm not gonna let anybody ever do that to me. And you start going through this whole internal thing. And what happens is it triggers you, and it makes you feel like, okay, no, I gotta control my environment. I gotta control the situation. And so we're constantly in that space where we feel like we have to control everything because we don't want to be hurt again. So we have to be mindful of that. Have you ever been so afraid of being hurt that you push someone away? Think about that. And y'all talk back to me on that one. Have you ever been so afraid of being hurt that you pushed away a good thing? Someone was trying to love you. Someone was trying to be your friend. Someone was trying to, be a good coworker to you, or be a good, saint at church, and just trying to get to know you, and just genuinely, wanting to conversate or whatever. And before they could even get out the door good, you already then blew them off. You already, are like, oh, no, I don't trust her. Nope. And we do that so often. And so in our minds, it feels like, well, I'm going to keep control of the situation. I'm going to make sure that I don't allow anyone to ever do this to me again. And so you have to be mindful of not allowing that to happen, because if you're not careful, you will live your life pushing people away. You will gain the reputation of being mean. You will be known as Sister So-and-so. Oh, she nasty. And, let me pause there for a minute. How those of us that are in the church, Christians, believers, those of us who say we name the name of Christ, how do we allow ourselves to be so self-unaware that we push people away in church, that we don't show the love of Christ, that we become the one who people shun away or stay away from because you're mean? I can't tell you how many times I had young people come to me and say, that mother or that person or sister so-and-so or brother so-and-so, they're mean. They're, they always got something mean to say. I didn't even do nothing. How many times do we judge people based off of stuff we probably used to do too? I just threw that one in there for free. That's not on my notes. How many times do have, as we get older, we forget, what we've been through, what issues we had to deal with, what things we had to work through, because we weren't perfect. But we forget about, even though you've been hurt, or even though you may have gone through some things, because, the older you get, they say the older you get, the wiser you get. But sometimes the older you get, the harder you can get, the harder your heart can become. And so it becomes harder for you to extend yourself, for you to love people. And so how do we, in the name of Christ, and we're constantly saying, and we pray, Lord, save the unsaved. Oh, I'm walking down the line tonight. We constantly, we're praying, oh, Lord, save the unsaved. Thank you for joining me, Celeste and Lydia. We're constantly saying, oh, Lord, save the unsaved. Oh, God, bring them in. Those of us who are on our prayer teams at church, we're constantly praying, Lord, send in the lost, because we want people to come to our services. We want to, bring people in. But then when they come in and they don't look like us, they don't smell like us, or they remind us of someone who maybe has been there previously who caused problems, we give them the cold shoulder. We mistreat them. We don't show the love that we should. And so we have to be mindful to not allow past experiences to affect our current circumstances or our future hopes. Some things I want you guys to think about. I want you to take a trust inventory, even while we're sitting here, and then I'm going to give you some things to ponder and some things that will help you work through your trust issues. So let's look at some of the things. I want you to do a trust inventory. I want you to name one fear you have about trusting others. Thank you, Robin. I'm glad you're enjoying the setting. Think about one fear that you have. What is that greatest fear that you have about trusting people? If you have a pen and paper, you can write it down. If you want to put it in the chat, you can. If you want to share. If you don't, if it's too personal, by all means, just make note of it for yourself. But I really want you all to leave here today with some points to ponder, and I want you to think. What's one fear you have about trusting people? Then I want you to think about, where did that fear come from? What happened? What caused you to get to a point where you struggle with trusting, where you struggle with dealing with new people that come into your life, where you struggle with opening up your heart, where you struggle with putting that wall down? What happened to you? Then I want you to think about, how has that fear protected you, or how has it isolated you? Having that fear and carrying that burden and carrying that anxiety and that emotional trauma, has it really helped you and protected you, or has it isolated you? Do you find yourself not wanting to go out anymore? All right, Dr. Chandler, you said they don't appreciate my gifts and talents. Absolutely. That can cause you to have a fear because maybe someone in the past didn't acknowledge what you bring to the table. I've been there. I know what it feels like to have all kinds of gifts and talents and want to help. But because people are stuck in tradition. Ooh, I'm talking now. People are stuck in tradition, or people are stuck in, well, that's not how we used to do it, or people are stuck in old ways and old habits, that they miss opportunities and amazing opportunities to embrace amazing talent and amazing gifted people who can elevate them. That's horrible. It's a bad thing. So that can cause you, if you've ever experienced that, if you had, all these ideas and you came to the table with a lot of experience and, and not just, just good ideas, but you got this experience to back it up. You know what you're doing. You know how to make it happen. And you can see where there's a need, but because they're afraid of anything new, or that's not the way they used to do it, or they're stuck in tradition, they shun the very thing that could elevate their game. Anybody else? Robin, you said when people don't appreciate you, you're genuine, the genuine person that you are. Absolutely. When you're genuine and, you come with your heart open, I know for me, I'm the type of person, I'm not good at having different faces. Like anybody that knows me knows I'm just Chantel straight across the board. I don't know how to fake. I don't know how to, play the game where I'm one way with this group and one way with another. If anything, I may get quiet because I'm observing and I'm mindful of what I say, because I know the weight that I carry in certain crowds. And so I don't ever want anybody to be able to say, well, Chantel said this. No, ma'am. No, sir. Mm-mm. So you have to, of course, be wise, but you being your genuine, loving, happy, happy-go-lucky person. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Dade. Latravius Hutchins, thank you for joining. When you are your genuine self and you're bringing that to the table and people treat you bad. Dr. Paisley says when men feel like women are not able to do. Absolutely. When you're in a situation, again, dealing with traditions and customs, and this is in corporate, this is in church, especially, in all types of settings, when you're dealing with chauvinism, when you're dealing with men who feel like, oh, women are only allowed to do certain things. And so it causes you to kind of just be inward and, just overthink. You get nervous when you get around them, and you start, worrying about what you say and, whatever, because well, I don't want them to think this. Have you ever dumbed down for someone because you weren't received by someone else before? I have. I've been in situations where, even spiritually, I knew God was speaking. I knew, God gave me a word for someone, or, God, had put it on my spirit real heavy to share with someone, in ministry or what have you. And because I knew the leadership I was under couldn't handle it, I squashed it. And of course, there's order, but even in situations where order was there, and then I had to go home and get beat up about it in my spirit, and the Lord, beat me up because I didn't do what I was told to do. There's been times when I've been up ministering and certain things that I could have said, maybe I didn't say because I was afraid of what people might think, when the Holy Spirit was pushing and prodding me to say something, but I didn't. And so we dumbed down, there have been times I didn't show all of my ability or things that I could have done in the corporate world. because I didn't feel like it would be appreciated, because previously, I was hurt, and my trust got bruised because certain people in leadership didn't accept it, before. And so I just held back a lot where I could have really helped, but, I held back. And we do all that. So those things I want you to kind of just think about. A fear you have about trusting others. Where did the fear come from? And has that fear really protected you, or has it isolated you? Because 9 times out of 10, it's not a protection. It's an isolation. And when you're constantly in fear because you have anxiety with trust issues, it'll cause you to pull back and you isolate yourself. You isolate your abilities. You isolate your talents. So this is what I want you guys to do. While you're thinking about that, I want you to shift from protection mode to discernment mode. Think about that. Start dealing with people on a case-by-case basis. Now, if you're writing down, I want you to write some of this down. Dr. Davis, Larice, wow, thank you for joining me tonight. How are you? Haven't seen you in years. So think about that. How can we start working on trying to build that trust, and how to break ourselves free from not trusting people and, from having that anxiety where we're afraid to step out and trust again? The first thing we have to do is give people the benefit of the doubt. No one should be able to change your mind about anyone except that person. I'm going to let that sink in for a minute. I tell anyone that I'm close to, any of my friends, anyone that I deal with, no one can change my mind about you but you. So first of all, we have to get rid of the gossiping. Woohoo. You can't be a gossip and running hot news and running the tea all the time and then think it's not going to affect you in the way you deal with people. That's just a moral and a Christian value. You should not be the person that runs all the news, the person that's always got some kind of gossip coming out of your mouth, because it will affect you later. When you meet a person, get to know them for who they are and deal with them on a case-by-case basis. Give people the benefit of the doubt, and of course, watch them until they give you a reason not to trust them. Give them that benefit of the doubt. Turn your protective mode into discernment. And so that's an area that we have to really pray about. You have to ask God, give me discernment. Help me to discern when I meet people. And then sometimes we can be too trusting too fast and tell all our business and just be on 10 when, maybe you should dial it back to 5. So you want to really read the room with the person. Take the time to get to know them and deal with them on a case-by-case basis. I shouldn't be treating Dr. Davis the way I treated Robin because Robin did me wrong. If y'all don't mind me using your names as examples. If me and Robin were friends and Robin did me dirty, then when I meet Dr. Davis, I'm giving her the side eye because, well, so-and-so did the same thing. She's a completely different individual. And it's not fair to that person to treat them a certain way based off of what someone else did. When you're in relationships, when you're starting to date again, if you had a man or a woman who did you dirty in the past and it caused you a whole lot of heartache, when you get to the point that you're ready to open yourself back up for that again, you can't base this new relationship off of what they did to you back then, what that other person did. It's a completely different person. Now, I will say this. Let me throw a caveat in there. If you find yourself dealing with the same kind of man or woman, and this is even in friendships, if you find yourself attracting the same kind of personalities as the one who hurt you or did you dirty or as that toxic relationship, it's not them, it's you. Can I get an amen right there? You need to check your picking skills. You need to check what is it about you that's drawing that type of person. And again, this goes back into discernment. So not only do you need to discern that person per se, but you need to discern yourself. Discern where your heart is. Am I really ready to step out again. You need to discern where you are emotionally and work on that. When you work on that, then you'll know that you're in a good space and a good headspace, because you attract what you are. You do know that, right? So if you constantly find yourself in situations where you're constantly being betrayed, you're constantly getting dogged out, you're constantly, dealing with people who, disrespect you and treat you like trash, you need to check yourself. There's something underneath there that needs to be healed and worked on. Because when you're out and about and you're trying to get into new relationships and new experiences and you haven't healed from the previous one, it's not going to work out for you well. Whenever you go out into the world, you have to go out into the world healed and whole. You can't be any good for anyone else if you're broken. So you want to use that discernment to check yourself first, to see, where am I first emotionally? And then you want to use that discernment in picking new people to bring into your life. When you're picking new friends, what kind of traits do they have? Do they have the same kind of traits as the previous person? Or are you drawing that negative energy based on the kind of person that you are? So you want to be discerning. And you can't go into a new relationship with that all or nothing attitude. So you go into a situation where it's like, either you're going to do A, B, C, A through Z, and you're going to check all these marks and all these boxes for me, or I can't deal with you at all. Can we say nobody's perfect? That's right, Dr. Davis. Don't bleed on people who didn't cut you. That's good. I'm going to have to use that in the future. That is very accurate. But can you think about that? What about, coming into a relationship or into a new experience? If they don't do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way through Z, and they don't check all the boxes, then I'm not dealing with them. I'm not, nope, because I went through that before. I dealt with that before. I'm not doing it. I'm not dealing with that. And again, so sometimes you sabotage something that could possibly grow and be something positive in your life, because you didn't give it a chance, because it was an all or nothing attitude. So what I would suggest is that you trust people in degrees. Allow people to show their consistency over time. Let someone show you who they are. Give people the benefit of the doubt and let them show you their consistency. Let them show you that they can be consistent, that they can be trusted. Amen. Amen. So let's think about this. This is a good point that I wrote down. Being on alert all the time is exhausting. I mentioned that earlier. So being in that hypervigilant, catastrophic mindset where you don't trust and you're dealing with anxiety, it causes you to be in this vicious cycle. You have fear, then you go to overanalysis, then it goes to anxiety, then it goes to emotional guarding, then isolation, and then back to more anxiety. And so it's just this vicious cycle. Can anybody relate to what I'm saying? And you find yourself in this cycle of mistrust. You find yourself in this cycle where you isolate and you go into a shell, and you turn in everything is, oh, I'm just Netflixing and chilling tonight. People calling, want you to hang out, people like, hey, why don't you do this? Or people inviting you to events, or people just, want to get to know you and spend time with you. But because you're in this whole protective mode and you're like, I'm not doing it. I'm not, thank you for joining me, Miss Sandra. You're in this whole isolated protective mode. You are going in this vicious cycle. First, it turns into fear. Again, overanalysis, anxiety, emotional guarding, isolating yourself, and then back into anxiety again. And you find yourself in this cycle. But I want you to take time to break the cycle. Y'all put that in the chat. Break the cycle. You got to break the cycle. How do you break the cycle, Chantel? Here you go. Pause and breathe. Y'all remember that episode? I think it was on the Cosby Show. It was with Debbie Allen and Claire. Debbie Allen, of course, is her sister, Felicia Rashad's sister in real life. But on the episode, I think she was playing a therapist or something. And remember, she was like, relax, relate, release. Relax, relate, release. Y'all remember that? Take that advice. Relax, relate, and release. Breathe. Pause and breathe. When you find yourself going in that cycle, when you find yourself all this anxiety and fear and mistrust, and you going through all these changes internally because something new has come across your path, take time to breathe. Analyze where you are and ask yourself this question. Do I have evidence that this person is being dishonest? What have they shown you? Have they shown you that they're, not to be trusted? Have they done something so bad? Now, I'm not saying little human mistakes, because again, everyone's human and you have to give people the benefit of the doubt. But, have they really done anything that bad to cause you to look at them as being dishonest or someone that you can't trust? So think about that. Thanks for joining me, John. Do you have that evidence? If you don't, then you need to dial it back and give them a chance to prove to you who they are. And it's not a matter of a person shouldn't have to come into your life and work or feel like they got to go through a bunch of hoops. Mr. Frederick, thank you for joining me. A person shouldn't feel like they have to go through a bunch of hoops to get your trust when they've not done anything wrong. You should when I say gain their trust or gain your trust or prove themselves, I'm not saying that they got to go through a bunch of, like you taking them through, a game show where they got to meet all these tasks and do all these things before you can trust them. If I got to trust you, you got to do this. Like you playing Squid Games with people, in order to be your friend. That's not fair. It's not fair. No one should have to go through and suffer and be mistreated or, treated poorly because of what somebody else did. And again, when you do that, you sabotage something that could be absolutely amazing. So then, replaying past betrayals and imagining worst case scenarios, overthinking and catastrophizing again. When you start doing that, every time something happens in this new relationship, and the person may do just a little thing and it may trigger something from your past or a situation that you dealt with, you automatically start going through and replaying past betrayals and imagining worst case scenarios. See, I knew they wasn't right. I knew it. I knew you wasn't all that. You did all that. And they're sitting like that. Well, I just made a little mistake, or what are you talking about? We don't give people the benefit of the doubt. So you have to stop doing that. Take the minute to pause and breathe. And then what I want you to do is challenge yourself to replace the negative thought with a neutral thought or a positive thought about that person or that situation. Take a moment to replace the negative piece. Take a moment to look at it from a different perspective. Maybe they didn't mean it like that. Maybe what their intent is nowhere near what you're taking in. You do know that a person's intent is not the same as your perception. Ooh, I'm going to let that sink in. That's good. That's not on my notes. A person's intent in an action is not necessarily your perception. And could it be that your perception is skewed because of past situations? So be mindful of that. Thank you for joining me, Lisa. Then I want you to set healthy boundaries instead of walls. It's okay to have boundaries in relationships and in new experiences. I'm not suggesting that you just go into a new relationship or a new situation with all guns blazing, and you just like, bam, here I am. I'm giving you everything. No, don't do that. That's not wise. You never go into any situation revealing all your cards and putting all your cards on the table. That's just life 101. But you want to get to a place where you replace those negative thoughts and feelings with positive thoughts. And if you can't get to positive, at least get to something neutral. Like, okay, let me come back to center. That's what that means. Like, center yourself back to okay, well, I know, let me come from that whole, because you done went way left. Come on back to the middle and give them a chance. Or look at the positive side and say, you know what? Maybe they meant A, B, or C. Let me stop, perceiving what I think their intent is. And the biggest thing is, if you're not sure of a person's intent, ask them. And I think the biggest way to get to know people is to have conversation. It's not just about, hanging out and, doing activities and all that stuff. But in those activities, the biggest way to get to know someone is to open up and talk. Build relationships through conversation. If you're hanging out with somebody, like for those of you who might be back on the dating scene, you shouldn't, I wouldn't suggest going to a movie. Go have dinners and sit somewhere kind of private where you can have a conversation, where you can look at a person in their eye, where you can have conversation. You can tell, some things about a person. You can discern some things looking at them and talking, and there's something intimate, even with friends, about sharing conversation over a meal. That's why you should be mindful of who you eat with. You shouldn't just be out all willy-nilly going to lunch with everybody. Be mindful of, who you eat, when you're sitting down eating a meal. Even same thing goes for picking someone to do your hair. These are intimate things where you're relaxed and your spirit is open. And so when you're in those kind of more intimate settings, you kind of let your guard down, which can be a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing. So you have to take it one step at a time. And if you've been in a traumatized situation, if you've been through some things, then take the time to breathe. Take the time to, reassess. Give yourself that space and give yourself that okay to breathe again, to love again, to live again. And instead of never trusting again, move forward slowly and observe first. Instead of looking at the glass as being half empty, look at it as half full. Take the time to observe, get the chance to know a person. Take the time to give them the benefit of the doubt, but open yourself up to trust again. Open yourself up to new experiences. Take that trip. If you had a bad experience on a trip before, it's okay, to give yourself some time, but then try it again. Just because you went on a bad cruise one time doesn't mean that the next time you go on a cruise is going to be horrible. I'm saying that because that happened to me. Like, I went on a cruise, and the only cruise I've ever been to, most of the time when I travel, I fly straight to wherever I'm going. This particular time I went on a cruise, it wasn't bad, but when I'm on vacation, if I'm going to be dealing with kids, I only want to deal with mine. And they're teenagers. They're I got one that's 18 and one that's 15. So, a bunch of little kids running around when I'm trying to relax and stepping over me and all over the buffet food. That's why y'all gonna laugh at me, but I struggle with buffets. I can't, because I get a little germophobic. But anyway, I digress. I went on this cruise and it was like kids everywhere. It was just too much, and I was trying to relax. And I said to myself, I don't know if I want to go on a cruise again. So that means I could be locking myself up from enjoying a great time again because I'm like, I had a bad experience on the last one, so I'm not going again. Well, I need to change that. So maybe the next time when I go on a cruise, maybe I need to pick something that's more adult. I heard that was on Royal Caribbean, so maybe I'll try Norwegian. They said they have no children and no casinos. That's right up my alley because I'm here to relax and I want to travel and do the offshore excursions and all that stuff. So maybe I'll try Norwegian the next time instead of Royal Caribbean. So I'm saying all that to say, as an example, instead of just completely writing something off or writing someone off, maybe kind of slowly try it another way. Try something different. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Let people get to know the real you. Open up your heart and let the sun shine in. I think that's a song. All right, guys. Hopefully this has been a help to you. I don't know, but these sessions are therapeutic for me as I'm talking through. A lot of the subjects that I come up with are things that I've I've dealt with or am dealing with still, and I'll tell you. This is an opportunity for me to be transparent. I think it's important as someone who's in the line of work that I'm in, as well as being a minister. If any of you have ever been to a service that I've ministered at, I am very transparent. I think that's a part of my personality, as well as just a part of what I feel like I've been called to do. And so hopefully this has been a help to you. Don't put yourself in that prison. Don't let the anxiety of mistrust and feeling like you think you're being protective actually be a prison for you. Come out of the prison, open up the bars, let the sun in, and allow the love and the peace to overshadow you, and let people show you who they really are. And once you find out who they are, then move accordingly, but give them the chance. Okay? Now, before I go, I want to remind you guys about my ebook. And I want to thank so many of you who have supported and downloaded the ebook, as well as the coping strategies handout that I have put on there for free. I wanted to give you something and not just ask you to support and buy, but I also wanted you to have something. Even if you don't buy the ebook, I want to be able to minister to you and to those of you that follow me. So I'm sharing the link here now. Hopefully you all can see it. But I want you to download that. Pay https://payhip.com Reset Coaching Academy. And as you all know, I've started that. My whole new thing is I call it Reset Coaching Academy because I'm going to be putting out more ebooks and more material to help people with emotional healing. So I want you to take a minute, download that. I've got the daily grief coping checklist. It's a simple checklist that you can use every day to kind of help you if you're having those moments, and not just if you're dealing with grief, even if you're dealing with any kind of anxiety at all. You can use this checklist to kind of help you ground yourself and kind of do some mental exercises to kind of bring you back to center so you can go on with your day. Because when you get triggered and you're having a moment, sometimes you can have an anxiety attack or a panic attack. This will kind of help you kind of center yourself and get back to, get your mind back so you can do what you need to do. And then I also have my ebook for you. It's called The Grief Survival Guide. And it's there on the link, and you can purchase that as well. But these are the things that I am giving and putting out in the world. It took me a long time to do this out of fear that it wouldn't be accepted, or whatever. But I'm finally at a point where I'm going to do what I know I've been called to do. And so my thing now is, whoever this helps, when I come on live, I'm going to give you what what God gives me to share some personal testimony, and just have an intimate time for us to really just talk and share. And hopefully these things are a blessing to you. And for those who even come back and watch the replay, and the ebooks and the other things that I'll be putting out will be something that you can take with you. You might not always have time to look at a live. You won't always have time to go back and try to find the subject matter on when was she talking about this or when was she talking about that. But you'll have something in hand that can help you along your journey to mental health and wholeness. Okay? That is all the time for tonight. I hope you guys have been blessed, and I hope you've gotten something out of this live tonight. I have. I'm really appreciative of everyone who always comes on. We had a good crowd tonight. Don't forget to like and share. If you know someone who could be helped by the topic matter that I'm discussing, please, by all means, tag them. Share this with them. Put it on your pages, and just let people know that there is someone out here who is dealing with real life issues, because life truly is lifing. And there's a lot going on in the world right now that will take some of us out if we're not careful. So when life is lifing, let's do something about it. Okay? Let's deal with it. And I hope and pray that you have a great evening. Know that I love you, but God loves you best. Goodbye. Have a good evening.